What's up YouTube? Happy New Year and welcome to my pickups video for the month of December 2025. I am ready to roll into 2026 and put 2025 behind me. So just wrapped up a vacation in the California desert. Had a great time out there, did a little game hunting, but there's honestly not a whole ton of game stores out there as compared to the LA side. But did get a few things out there as well as some other things along the month. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about some of the things I found. First one of these was when I got out that way, I landed in the Inland Empire, which is kind of like the area in between LA and the California desert. And there is a few game stores out there, but I didn't have a whole lot of time, and I stopped at the Book Off location in the Inland Empire. I'd been to that one before. It's actually a pretty good one. It doesn't seem to get as picked over as some of the LA stores with more traffic. And they do have quite a few import games there. So had a good time looking around. Only ended up buying one thing, but some neat stuff there for sure. This one was one that I'd heard of, but I hadn't really put very high on my want list until I saw it in person. And this is a Japanese Game Boy release called Pre-Pre, which is a portmanteau of Primitive Princess. And what it really is a single-screen platformer by Sunsoft, a genre I really like. So all those games like Bubble Bobble, big fan of those, and this is one that I wanted to have. I think this one traces its roots a little bit earlier. This one's more like an early computer game that maybe Sunsoft worked on, and then they brought it to Game Boy. I've heard it's incredibly hard and not very forgiving, but definitely looking forward to trying it out. The reviews I read likened it mostly to The Berlin Wall by Kaneko, which I already have, and I do like that game, so if it's anything like that, I'm sure I'll enjoy it. But basically, you're the caveman trying to rescue your primitive princess in the game, hence the caveman artwork on the cover. So, interested to try this out. Like I said, very impulse purchase, but it seemed appealing and was a decent price at Book Off, so went ahead and grabbed that. There was a store that I didn't know about, which was in the desert, in the high desert, and somebody at another store that had a whole bunch of junk, I asked them if they had video games, and they said, "We don't, but there's a store down the street that just opened you might want to check out." So, wasn't even on Google yet. Apparently they just opened a couple weeks ago, and their primary focus was Pokemon cards, it looked like, and stuff like that. But they did have a few video games in a case, and their prices seemed like they were all over the place. Like they were, some things felt like market price, some things felt very high, some things felt very cheap. And so what was interesting is they had mostly like, disc system games and up, but they had one Nintendo game in stock, which is Alien 3. And this one was incredibly underpriced. I think they just priced it by feel or something like that. So decided to grab this. I already had it, but this one's a label upgrade. And this one is one of the later releases that kind of goes under the radar. You wouldn't really think is anything special just because it's a movie game. But it is a late acclaim release, and just happy to get a label upgrade on this. And for the price, I couldn't knock it. I asked them if they had any other Nintendo games, and they said, no, somebody came in and bought all the rest of them a couple days ago. And I'm just thinking, like, if they were all this underpriced, somebody probably got a really good deal on them. So, very happy to have a nice upgrade for that. There is one other game store kind of in the California desert area as you're entering into the low desert, and it's this store that I've been to a couple times that has some really nice people working there. And they seem to get a lot of great stuff, probably because they're really the magnet for that whole area since there's not a lot of other competition. But this time they had a stack of Neo Geo Pocket Color games in their case that were all complete in the box. I have a complete set of the US titles, and they had several ones that took me a while to find, so it was pretty neat to see those in person. But they did have one Japanese release that caught my attention, and I said, okay, I think I can go for that. So this is the first Samurai Spirits game, or Samurai Showdown as we know it in the US, that came to Japan exclusively. We got the second game in the series in the US, but this one didn't come here. And this one's kind of fascinating for a few reasons. This was a very early release for the Neo Geo Pocket, and notice I didn't say Neo Geo Pocket Color. So this is actually one of the black and white releases that came out early in the system's lifespan. And you can see the screenshots on the back are in black and white. But what is interesting about this one for a couple ways is SNK was very forward-looking when they put these together, and that this one is actually forward compatible. And what I mean by that is not only does it work with the Neo Geo Pocket Color, it actually is enhanced on the Neo Geo Pocket Color. So they did it very much like the early Game Boy Color games, where like you could take a black and white Game Boy game and then put it in a Game Boy Color, and you could pick like a single palette color to have just basically one color on the screen since it wasn't optimized for it. It works the same way. You pick like one of 4 color schemes, and then it'll display it in color on a Neo Geo Pocket Color. Pretty neat and plays great, just like all these other SNK fighters of that era that work really well with the clicky joystick on the Neo Geo Pocket. I'm also in this weird place. I mean, I completed the US set. I don't think I'm going to go for the Euro set because there's some really spicy stuff that was Euro exclusive. Japanese set, maybe down the road. And I do think one thing that kind of leads me to either of those other markets is that a lot of the games have these really cool snap cases that we didn't get here. And it's very high quality. Just the way that it's put together is kind of fascinating. I never owned one of these. But they just put a lot of stuff in the case. So you get a little foam block, just like you would with like a Saturn game. And then you got your game in the, hard plastic case that it comes in, like typical. Get a warranty card, and then they tuck the manual inside these little tabs. So it's very well presented and like preserves itself very well, especially. And then it just has just a very satisfying click whenever you close the edge. Has SNK embossed in the casing as well. So just kind of neat to have one of these. I've never had any of these in my collection, and now I'm like, that'd be kind of cool to have some of these because they're really durable cases compared to what we got. So very happy to find this. It was kind of fun just talking to the people that were working there because it was a couple people working that had never played a Neo Geo Pocket Color, and they happened to have a system that probably got traded in with these. And so I gave them a demo of kind of like what the system could do, and I think they were like instantly won over. They were like, wow, that is really fun to play with the clicky joystick, and they never would have thought. So hopefully created some new fans for the system that I really like. So fun to find that out there. One thing I got locally before I went on my trip, this was from a local game store that was having just a small sale before Christmas. And they had a large import game collection traded in like maybe a year or two ago, and they've just kind of been whittling it down, but there still is a lot in inventory. It's just their prices are still kind of high, so I haven't really dipped in too heavily, but there's definitely some stuff I would like. But this one caught my attention for a few reasons. So this is Chase HQ plus SCI by Taito for the Sega Saturn in Japan. This one's interesting for a few reasons. So number one thing that absolutely caught my attention, this one has the original arcade poster art on the cover, and that's a big plus for me because I have a Porsche 928 S4, and lo and behold, there's a Porsche 928 S4 not only on the cover, but it is your main character car in the game. So very appealing for that reason, just out of nostalgia and just the connection to the car I have personally. Very fun game. I think this game has never truly gotten the best possible arcade to home conversion that we have all hoped for, and there's a few reasons behind that. So this one has both early games in the series, as the original Chase HQ arcade game, and then SCI, which is Special Criminal Investigation, which was the sequel. That game does not have a Porsche 928 in it, and instead it has the Nissan 300ZX early 90s model, so that's your character car in the second game. So obviously that one's not as good. But this one was emulated by Taito themselves, which is kind of strange because most of the early Taito ports that came to the Saturn were done by Ving, another company. And maybe Ving did this behind the scenes and just isn't credited, but Taito actually took the credit for putting this out. That being said, it's very bare bones. Like, they didn't really put anything extra in it other than just putting the two games on the disc. And as far as like why these games have never really gotten a truly great version of them, in my opinion, is that really the only other better version of this is on the Japanese Taito PS2 compilation Taito Memories. There's one that has both of these games on it. But the issue is the same as with this, is that the game has a lot of voice in it, and all the voices from your operator Nancy at the police station are all in Japanese, and there's no English option for this or the other one. So we actually haven't gotten a true arcade version of it complete with the voices in English, because even when those Taito Memories packs came to the US, they took those games out. And I don't know if it's possibly because of dubious licensing, because I can tell you Taito didn't pay Porsche or Nissan to use their cars in the games. So it's kind of the Outrun effect where, a lot of the modern versions of Outrun, they've removed the Ferrari logos from the cars, because in some cases even modified the car, because Sega didn't pay Ferrari for that either, for the Testarossa. So kind of a bummer, but I do like this just because you do get the full artwork on the cover, and just very fun. I played this quite a bit actually before I went on my trip, trying to master the game and that kind of thing. All the enemy cars in this are also just neat late 80s cars that, were kind of that same genre, and so there's a Lotus Esprit, there's a Lamborghini Countach, all that kind of stuff, so it's just fun chasing those down. If you haven't played Chase HQ, it's very much like an Outrun style game as far as the scaling and the racing goes, but the ultimate objective is you got to catch the criminal car and then ram into it multiple times so you can capture the perp. So very fun, concept that I think was pretty unique at its time. It's not as well executed as Outrun, of course, but it is definitely a good time. If you haven't ever played it, there is an arcade exclusive Chase HQ 2 that came out maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, Never got a home version, and it's a ton of fun. Every time I see that arcade cabinet, I have to play it. It's called Chase HQ 2, but it's really like the 4th or 5th game in the series, which makes it super confusing. So if you see that one, definitely check it out. But very happy to have this one in the collection just because I think, again, the artwork's super cool and neat to have it on the Saturn. Another thing I got this month was from eBay, and this was something that I've been piecing together for years just with determination because I had a couple of the pieces that I didn't want to just rebuy everything all over again just to get it complete separately. So I got Airbuster for the Sega Genesis, the box, off eBay, and it went very well because I had a very nice clean manual and cartridge already that I'd pieced together, and just slowly was waiting for a box that wasn't sun-faded or had a bunch of stickers on it or video store residue or whatever. This one's actually really clean, and so just very happy to have this. This game's kind of interesting for a few reasons. So I do have the arcade board of this, so I can play the arcade perfect version of this. It also came to the TurboGrafx 16 as Aero Blasters. They changed the name. And then the reason the Genesis version stands out is this one had a cool mail-away offer where you could get the Kaneko Gamer's Glove to play the game with because the action was so hot. So the way this worked is the game originally came with a mail-away card in the box. I don't know how many people actually mailed it away. Then you got your glove in the mail, and then those just had a lot of attrition, and I don't think there's many left. So I'd like to have the glove someday. The funny thing, though, is the glove looks really cool on the back of the box. It's got a thumb covering, so you can mash the button super fast. And it's made for your right hand, which is kind of interesting, because that's obviously the button-pressing hand. However, the real glove looks nothing like this. It's fingerless, and I believe it fits your left hand, which doesn't really make sense, because then it only works with the D-pad. So kind of a case of false advertising. I don't know if something happened in the mix, but the glove is kind of interesting, and it'd be cool to have that in the collection too someday. I think there's one on eBay right now. I've got it in my watch list, but I'm definitely not paying the price that it is right now. So we'll see if I ever find that down the road. But very happy to get that. I think this honestly is like the last shooter for the Genesis that I didn't have complete, so maybe I'll put a video together of all those now that I have, hopefully, the set of those. There's a couple I'd like to upgrade for condition, but very fun set to put together for the US library. I don't have all the Japanese ones, at least. But, you know, very neat to have this, and I do like playing this game. It's got some great speed to it. I did get a couple magazines this month also. I bought a lot on eBay. If you haven't watched the recent video on the history of EGM that GameSack and My Life in Gaming put together, highly recommend checking it out. They talk to primary sources that were there when everything went down and get a lot of wonderful behind-the-scenes history about the magazine, and it just kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of like wanting to chase more EGMs, even though I was kind of trying to collect all the early issues as is. And what caught my attention on this listing is it had something included, which was one of their special magazines that I'd never seen before. And in the video, they talk heavily about all these spin-off magazines and specials, and ultimately they were recycling a ton of the content, just packaging it a different way. But I thought this was cool because this one I'd never seen. This is the EGM Player's Guide to Sega Saturn Video Games. And it is basically something that they put out to promote when the Sega Saturn was new in the US, and has features on all the early releases as well as previews of other games that were coming out early in '95. And then it also features some of the Japanese titles, which is what I thought was pretty cool about this. So, again, just stuff that you could pretty much find easily. It's nothing like super unique, but it did have some cool just articles on things like this that we didn't get in the US, like the Proteus Deluxe Pack. So cool to get some screenshots and perspectives on that, even though it was a game that got skipped for the US market, and even though I think it was a Japan launch title. So neat to have this. I don't know if it's really worth anything special. It was just in this bundle, and so it was pretty cheap, but it was one that I definitely hadn't seen before, so happy to grab that. And then also in the bundle, it had an issue from January '97, which I just didn't have, and this is one of the kind of thicker issues that's around the holiday season that are always nice to find. So had some good perspective on like early PS1 games that were out at the time, and I would say like '97 felt like a pretty big transition year for the magazine. You kind of hear about that in the video, like some of the old guard was whittled away as the magazine moved from Illinois to California, and a very new crew came in, as well as a new editor-in-chief that did not participate in the video, and you can kind of tell the tone of everything changed very quickly once that took place. So I'm not really sure where this one landed in that mix, but I would say it was definitely around that time where you started to see some changes with the magazine overall. And just very cool. You know, if you haven't checked out that video, definitely give it a watch. It's about an hour long, and it's well worth it. So that about does it for the month. Didn't have any other real travel this month other than California, but had a good time out there. I'm hoping 2026 will be better, and looking forward to seeing what I can find this year. So thank you very much for watching. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.